Hi, it's Janice from Le Bruit de Fleurs. Welcome back into the studio. Today we are going to work on a really cute and quick idea for making some funky mushroom applique. So if you are interested in getting started with some fun appliques, that is what we're going to do. So stay tuned. This one is for another project. So I was working on drafting some little patterns. I typically just sketch out what I want on pieces of plain copy paper and just kind of fool around with the idea. This one is based off of a piece of material that I have to work with to make a bigger quilt pattern for an upcoming We Like Quilting online magazine. I'm kind of using this pattern or this Northcott fabric as my inspiration. I'm trying to find the copyright information here for you. Deborah Edwards for Northcott. I believe it's called Wild Harvest. I absolutely love it. I've used it in a couple of things, and it's the same print that we used to make the apron panel last week, if you saw that one. If not, go back and check that out. That's another really fun beginner project. Then I dug through my bin for all of the colors. I'm kind of trying to go with like a 70s natural vibe based on the print there, but also kind of the spec for the magazine. So that's how I work. And I have a couple of different shaped mushrooms to play with. So I sketched those all out. And then my daughter later used her little drawing editing tablet, and she created like much nicer versions of templates for me to send off. And I am going to use this heat and bond to create basically like giant stickers. So if you've never worked with heat and bond before, it is a special fabric adhesive that's heat activated. It comes on a paper. You can see the shiny sticky side there. And then once you press it, you use a hot iron and you press it onto your fabric on the wrong side, and then you peel away the backing, you have an additional sticky layer, and then you press that onto your fabric with the pretty side up and the sticky side down, and you've basically created like a fabric sticker. So it's really fun. You can do lots and lots of things with this and explore it. If it's great for customization, it's wonderful for applique. And that's what I'm doing here. So I'm just tracing around my little pattern pieces until I get everything laid out. I try to put them as tight together as I can so that I'm not wasting my heat and bond, although it's not like terribly expensive. So it's really fun to have in your stash just to play with. And I'm just using regular paper scissors here. You would not want to use your fabric scissors. That's a no-no. That'll dull them out. So I'm just going to use my fabric scissors and cut out all of my puzzle pieces basically. And you can see I've labeled them just to make it easier to put it back together and to know what everything is. Some of the pieces are relatively similar, so I recommend that that's a good idea. If you're making multiple different things, you have to layer them up, or if you're following someone else's templates and directions that you would label as you go, so you don't have to stand there and try to figure it out later. And then after I did this, I decided that wasn't necessary, that little notch, but sometimes you just have to play around with things till you figure it out. Now I'm placing them on the squares that they're going to eventually be appliqued onto. So this is a quilt block that fits in the pattern, and I'm just sort of playing with the layout until I figure out how many different mushrooms I'm going to put on each block. And what I really want it to look like. So I'm starting with this really pretty like Kona Cocoa. I believe that's the color this one is. And I'm just sort of messing around with the different shapes that I have. I have some smaller little skinny mushrooms. I have this fatty little mushroom here. And I'm repeating some of them so I can make obviously more than one. I would just have to go back and cut out additional applique until I get the little scene that I want. So you can just build there. And then as I'm working, I'm taking notes. So this is how I come up with different pattern ideas. I just play around, and then I have really crappy scratch graph paper notes that I take while I'm working so that I know what I'm doing. And here I'm just cutting out a couple of additional of the mushrooms to make some more. And then I try to match them up with fabric. Spoiler alert, I do not end up using this little vintage, I believe this is actually even from the 70s, this little scrap vintage bit of brown floral, but I don't end up using it because I go with a little bit brighter colors in the end. I just couldn't get a good match. But that's part of it here is I'm just looking through everything that I pulled out of my bins that I could possibly work with and sort of getting an idea of what I want the final product to be. So I need to mix in some scrap fabrics to give it like a funky look, but I don't want to have it too scrappy. And I want to repeat some of the fabrics that I'm using in the rest of the quilt, which obviously can't just be some of these very random scraps. So I'm just having a look and auditioning different things. And I do recommend this with all of the projects. If you have lots of scraps, hit that bin up first. It's really fun. And I think I reiterate this time and time again, but it makes your projects more unique when you use little bits of things that are sort of unexpected or that you just have a tiny little bit of. In addition to repeating some of the elements that you have bought just for that project. So it also helps keep your scrap bin down if you're constantly looking through those things and making it top of mind to work with them first before you cut into some brand new things, especially for little pieces like this for applique. So once I chose all of my fabrics, I'm just going to do the stickering. So I'm spreading everything out. You're going to put that heat and bond with the shiny, sticky side down on the wrong side of your fabric. And then you just follow the directions. I'm leaving enough that I can make a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch seam around the outside of my template piece. And then you just press it down until it's stuck. Heat and bond tells you exactly how you need to do this, but I'm just spacing them again. So I'm wasting as little as possible, but I want to make sure that I can cut and leave myself a seam allowance, or in this case, like a folding allowance to wrap over the edges of each one of my pieces. So I'm choosing some of the fabrics that I'm going to repeat in my quilt top, which is both of these here. One is a vintage fabric. That large scale brown and orange floral is a vintage fabric someone gave to me. And this little dainty daisy is a new print that I bought, which I can't read the information on right at the moment, but it's a new fabric. And I am going to apply them here to this large square of cloth that I have. So I have all of my little bits and pieces, and we're going to work with those until they're all ready to go. And I even have a couple of strips that I found that I think will work really well for these small stem pieces here for my smaller mushrooms. And I will still have that fold over allowance that I require. And once I've gotten everything stuck onto the fabrics that I selected for it, I'm going to cut them all out again around the template, leaving an approximate 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch around the outside. And this is what I'm going to eventually fold over the edges here to not have any raw edges on my applique. So I'm peeling back the little sticker part, and then I'm going to fold them over and sort of stick them to the edge. Now, I realized afterwards that this probably was not the best idea because I was sticking my... First of all, I was burning my fingers. Secondly, it was really difficult because I didn't want to get the sticky stuff all over my iron. So maybe just folding over the fabric onto the template while you still have the paper side down so you can get that folded edge, but without, burning your fingers and sticking your iron into it, because I was trying to hold it in place, then stick, etc. And then you have to notch around these corners or in these turns, just like you would if you were turning a bag or going around a fold of something else. You want to notch into it so the fabric can bend around that turn. So here I'm just working on a different piece, folding it over, but you can see how cute they are. And then they fit together like a little puzzle. And I've just have no raw edges sticking out. And I'm basically ready with a glorified, really it's a fabric sticker that I've created. So I'm going to pick away any little things that might look yucky or trim off any little stray threads so that that's not stuck into my applique then. And also you need to go back and tidy up any other frayed bits that you might have. So then I'm just kind of continuing on here, preparing the rest of my pieces, folding over. Obviously with the larger pieces, it's a lot easier to work with. So if you're new to applique and you've never done anything like this before, I would start with bigger pieces. Obviously, they're less fussy and time consuming because you have more square footage to fold, and on this particular mushroom, much larger curves to go around, so there's a lot less fussing. I didn't need to notch anything or all of that business, but it was still a pretty easy process, to be honest, other than keeping your fingers out of the way. So once I have them all done, I am sticking them down onto the panels that I've decided, and you just use your iron to press and hold everything in place. It's really that simple. You're just going to stick them down, and then you're all good to go. So give it a hot press, and then it will be on to the sewing machine. Using the heat and bond does eliminate the need to have it all pinned, so you're not going to have to remove a whole bunch of pins as you work your way around. And then I'm just using my machine and my walking foot, and I'm doing a really basic top stitch all the way around each piece, anywhere that it overlaps as well. So basically all of the edges, because you'll remember, since I folded my edges over, there's no sticky right around the outside. And I want it to be nice and secure. Although you'll notice you don't have to get super precise. It can be a little bit without being completely stuck. But also the top stitching, not only does it look nice and defines sort of the outline of the piece, it is going to make sure that it is super secure for future washing. So I just sort of choose a line, and then I'm sewing down it until I get everything. And I am using the little automatic knotting feature of my sewing machine to start and stop, so that I don't have a bunch of threads to contend with, although there are a few, and I just simply nip those away. But you can see that they're nice and secure. I've got a cute little outline. There's my little sweetie mushrooms in their funky colors. And there's the back. You can see where the machine automatically knots things for me, and they're nice and secure. Finally, I am just going to go through each one of the different squares and appliques that I did and trim away any excess little thread tails and make sure that there's no funky little stray threads sticking out, and that all of my applique looks as nice as possible and is clean from debris. And here you have it. Now, I've created 3 different patches and blocks of applique, and they're going to be inset into a really cute and funky quilt that I have coming up. I can't share that because it's top secret for the magazine, but I hope you enjoyed the applique tutorial today and that it inspires you to get into your sewing room and try something maybe that you haven't before. If you loved this video, please like and subscribe for more. See you next time.